Hello. Thank you all so very, very much for being here. It's, it's a massive honor for me to be here and our whole team to be amongst such lovely people. Really got to thank, Darren and Lisa and Jade and Nini and Keat and everyone from Kita that's made us feel so welcome, and all the people from Yellowfin Horse as well that have really looked after us, and Chef Joan and the whole team has been just spectacular. So we've had the best possible time. And also my team, Xander and Beatrice, who you'll meet in a few minutes, they've really, really worked incredibly hard to, well, give us all a really good time. So we've been very happy. So there we go. Beautiful. This is a talk about squid, but I suppose it's not really much of a talk about squid, but we are going to kind of bring squid as part of a way to represent what we like to do in our restaurant. Kind of like what we can do with it helps to show, I guess, what we can do with a lot of other things. So using it as a bit of a base point. There we go. Sorry. So, well, you're going to have to bear with me on this one. I'm not much of a presenter. Oh my goodness. All right, cool. No, I had it right the first time. All right, nailed it, we're good. So, full circle restauranting. Where are we? Yes, nailed it. So we're going to say that that's a real word. You'll just have to bear with me on that one. Restauranting, that's a word in this context. For us, it's basically what we like to think about with our business. We want to try and look at the whole part of everything that we have, everything that's in our process. We want to get everything that we can out of everything that we have. We have minimal resources. The business is owned by myself and my wife. And we've put everything we have into it, and it supports our family. So it has to work. We don't have a choice on this one. The way we look at it is we want to work with people we like. We want to use suppliers that we can really stand behind, and we want to make things that we care about. It's a way of respecting all of that as well. So there we go. My name is Ben. Myself and my wife, Yen, we run Pipit. It's kind of like our second child. Unfortunately, it was born at the exact same time as our first child, so the toddler time was a bit rough, unfortunately, but I think there's probably a few people here that can resonate with that one. We live in Pottsville. This is us here. Lovely beach and lovely river there. You can see most of the town in that photo. It's not a very big town. So where we are is in the Tweed region of New South Wales. We're about a 1-hour flight from Sydney, or 8-hour drive, about 15 minutes south of the Gold Coast. So pretty small little beautiful area. We are surrounded by some larger cities, more or less, but where we are is pretty rural, so really, really nice. This is a map of our suppliers. So as best as possible, about 90% of what we get comes from within sort of a 30-minute drive of our restaurant, so right here in the middle. Super lucky we can get fish from a guy who lives in town. He sort of fishes coming off of Kingscliff, kind of fishes out the front. We've got a really beautiful lobster farm not too far away. There's an organic farm, a couple more organic farms. The beer comes from there, also the spirits. Yeah. Really, really fortunate. If you did eat at the dinners that we did the other days, you got produce from, Bucks Farm here. You got some produce from Boonluck Farm. You got some produce from Bicone Farm, things that we've preserved and stuff like that. So really, really fortunate. We run a set menu, lots of little tastes. We think that mostly that's a good way for us to get the most out of what we have, to spread things across multiple servings, but also we think we can offer a better value proposition that way for our guests. We can use less staff, we can use less infrastructure and create more. By charging a set price, we can give people more value. It's a challenging one. A Ferrari might be great value, but it's still expensive, right? So set menus are a bit of a tricky game sometimes, but we kind of stand behind what we do. Sorry. Absolutely nailing it. All right, cool. So from a food perspective, there's a few rules that govern mostly what we do. we think if we work within a creative process that we've sort of set out, it'll hopefully help us to, really nail focus on what we want to do, really try to get the most out of it. So we want to use unique local produce, either things that are, wild, endemic to the area, or just, particularly unique, really well made. We aim for maximum flavour and minimum waste, so preservation techniques really help with that, using koji, lactic acid fermentation, all sorts of things that we can really kind of build a strong, solid flavour profile from to sort of like layer in different things. And we select seafood and meat and the products we use using sustainability guidelines that we as a team have collectively agreed upon with the input of people like the Australian Marine Conservation Society and the RSPCA. Nailed it. All right, so this is our restaurant. I'll get out of the way of it, actually. It's a better idea. It's a small space. There's a little wood fire grill in the middle. It's kind of, I suppose, the heart of the business from a, from a physical, but I suppose from a, kind of an ethical point of view as well. It's where everything goes. All the food's going to touch it or be controlled by it. I wanted a wood fire grill in our area. If you have an open fire fuel source, then you need dedicated extraction for it, and I couldn't afford 2 extractions, so that meant no other stoves, no other deep fryers. Sometimes you just have to make a choice on what's important. I thought that was important, and stoves would have to wait, basically. So, maybe next time we can afford it. The space was built by myself and my dad, who's a retired carpenter, was a retired carpenter, and filled out by a few local businesses as well. Things like, the pendant lights were hand blown on the Gold Coast. The timber, we had a local carpenter come through. I did the tiling, which, as you can see, perfect, obviously, first time. And me and Dad built the tables out of recycled timber. So to explain, I guess, a little bit more about how we see our cycle, the best thing to look at is food. It's kind of got the most easily distinguishable steps. So we'll work out how it all sort of comes together. There we go, nailed it. Starting with an ingredient or variety of ingredients, we tend to sort of pick them apart, distill down the things that we like out of each unit, preserve some parts of it, serve some parts of it as it is, and we think that by doing this we can use different things in different ways, create different layers, get a better expression of what an ingredient is through our food. A circle diagram, as my wife, who is a designer, kind of put together for us, is a good way for us to think about how we do things. Basically, it breaks down to the produce, the sourcing of the produce. Next step might be, printing, potentially, if we want to create something out of it. Can't do that with everything, but some things it works really well. Plated dishes from primary ingredients, primary cuts, plated dishes from secondary ingredients or secondary cuts, preservation things, and prolonging, so maybe making serving vessels, things like that, trying to get the last little bit of juice out of an ingredient, basically. The way that works is produce will be procured, in this instance, really nice seafood from Daniel Fleming, who lives in Pottsville, fishes off the coast. Again, we're trying to use things that we think are good quality, good flavour, sustainable, but will be easy enough to work with as well. If we don't have the time to break down a larger animal, then there's no point wasting our labour on it, more or less. We need to really be careful with what we do. We might, on occasion, print it, which I'm realising now the table is probably blocking that for a lot of you guys, so sorry about that. But sometimes we will make artworks from some of the produce, often fish. Sometimes we'll do it with duck or vegetables, all sorts of things like that, to create an artwork that we can either use in the restaurant as a way to better explain the things that we're serving, but also sell them as another revenue stream, because we need that as well. We use a Japanese method called gyotaku, and we'll go through that a little bit later on. And then you would move on to plated dishes. So the primary cuts of an ingredient, we would turn into, a main course, cutting fish. The loins would go on. That would be hopefully supported by preservation things that we've done in the past. Maybe the same fish from a few months back or a year back that we've turned into something else. But generally speaking, the primary cut wants to stand alone as a star and just be supported. Secondary, so that's turning, green waste into tasty waste paste. It's turning the fat from fish into fish fat caramels, or the bones from fish into a bone flour biscuit. Obviously, a range of things can be done there. Terrines, pickles, all sorts of stuff like that. And then preservation methods, so turning other things that might be a little harder to serve as a secondary into, pickle, vinegar, amazake, shoyu, miso, all sorts of different things. Building a flavor library, I suppose, that we can use in the future. Ideally, what we want is an ingredient's going to come in and we're going to use the primary, we're going to use the secondary, and then we'll keep aside the preserves so that next year when that same ingredient comes in, we can maybe season it with something that we've made out of it the year before. So peas is a super good example. Really nice fresh peas. We can clean them, double shuck them, serve them as part of a dish. With that dish, we've got miso from last year that will enhance the flavor, and we've got shoyu that we made from the shells of the peas the year before. So we can use 3 vintages worth of peas over a dish, which is really nice. And then prolonging, which would be getting the last little bit out of it. So we have a program with the lady who makes our plates where we have built a little kiln out of a shopping trolley and insulation and a blowtorch because we broke a regular kiln trying to do this, unfortunately, and that was expensive. And we can fire bones and turn them into bone china. So they fire to about 1,000 degrees, the bones turn into calcium, grind that down, and as I found out at the start, the bone in bone china is actual bone. I just thought that was a saying at first, I'm not gonna lie to you. Didn't realize that was a real thing. But then there's other basic things like we're getting in emu eggs, we can use those as plates. Crab shells, you can use them. There's other ways you can find to get something out of it, basically. So what we're gonna do today with the help of my lovely friends Beatrice and Xander is grab a squid, break it down a little bit, show you a little bit about the printing process, how we can get a nice artwork out of it, and then make a couple of dishes really quickly with the use of no particular cooking apparatuses. But I think it should be all right. So I'll just get Beatrice and Xander to jump on out, if they can hear me. There we go. All right. Lovely people, you may have seen them so far. You can just jump on somewhere. So, yep, you grab that. I'm gonna put that over there. So Jun and the team from Yellowfin Horse got us some lovely squid. We used a bit of it for our dinner. We've got a really nice one here that we can work with today. We use a bit of squid at home as well, which is good. I think this is pretty similar to what we'd normally work with. I'm realizing that it's going to be a little hard for you guys to see what we're doing, but I'll try and talk you through the process as well. So, as I said, I think squid's a super good representation of what we do because we can get a lot out of it. From the squid, we have potential to make a lovely artwork, which is always good. We have the ability to make really nice dishes out of the tubes and the legs. We can make exo sauce out of the wings and the offcuts. We can make garum out of the guts, and we can use the ink for our artworks. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly break this guy down a little bit without damaging it too much. We'll extract the ink sac, and then we'll use that to make our print. That tray. So I quite like doing these artworks, these Gyotaku prints. It's something that I personally kind of came across during lockdown when I had slightly more time. I'm not sure about you guys. I had a little bit of spare time every now and again. And I found it's a really good way to, I guess, get across to guests as well what an ingredient was, to bring a bit of life back to it. And I think that's really important because, these are things to be respected. But also for us, it's just kind of enjoyable. I think it's a nice artwork, and I also think that it's a good way to, give a bit of respect back to the ingredient. Squid's a good one because the squid ink sac should, generally speaking, provide enough ink to print one squid, although I won't lie to you, I have saved a bit of backup ink just in case. Last thing we want is a half-printed squid on stage. It would be a little frustrating, but that's all right. So just extract the ink through this lovely fine strainer. We want to make sure it's nice and clean. We don't want to have kind of sand or grit in there because it'll damage the reproduction of the artwork. So traditionally, the prints would be done often with some fish using sumi ink, the calligraphy ink. My understanding is it dates back to around the 18th century and was a really good way for people that were very good at fishing to prove to people that they weren't lying when they said the fish was really this big. And then from there, it kind of develops out into a really nice, beautiful way of, creating nice artworks and also sharing with the community what's out there, which is always good. So in the process, it's a good idea to be nice and clean. So I don't want to damage the paper. But basically, we'll extract out the ink. We're going to dress the squid with the ink. I think squid's a really good one as well because they're very pliable, so we can create an artwork that's sort of got a bit of life to it. And you can move it around and do what you want. With fish, it's a little bit trickier because they're a little more static, but at the same time, they're still pretty beautiful. So because I've pulled the guts from this one, I'm just going to fill it with a little bit of paper to make it sort of feel a bit firmer. Just cut that down. All right. So we've done the process with a range of different things back at the restaurant over time. Squid's a favorite. Octopus always looks good. There's a lot of nice fish that we get, sort of nice flat ones like raised brim. John Dory works out really well. Had a lot of fun printing duck. I don't know if you've ever seen a duck once it's slowly no longer alive, but still with its feathers on, but it can be a little bit messy, so it did need a lovely bath in the sink, and I had to bring in my wife's hairdryer to give it a little blowout, give it a little fluff, which would have looked pretty weird if you were walking past the restaurant on a Saturday night, staring through the window with a duck hanging from the extraction and a blow dryer. But it was fluffy as. It was super cute. Really liked it at the end. So, all right. So we're going to go with a side-on profile for this one, I reckon. I like creating prints where the squid kind of looks really alive and is moving around a bit. What I've found is that people seem to like the ones where it's a straight line running through the paper. Found that, I don't know, it's sort of, well, it sold better, basically. You'd put the two up, one's sort of like a squid that's kind of dancing and a bit strange, and one's like kind of dead across a sheet of paper, and people always seem to go on the straight one, so. All right. So the key to getting a nice reproduction is being nice and clean and dry squid, no outside impurities, and then basically trying not to change the shape too much, keep it nice and steady, and then you're just working on the shading basically. So a little more ink in the areas that you think are a little darker, a little less ink in the areas you think are a little lighter, so often the belly side basically. You're using a brush to brush it on, but then also we'll use a cotton bud to sort of kind of temper it out, remove the brush strokes. Not painting over the eyes because there's no texture in the eyes, so if you want detail of an eyeball or a pupil or something like that, you need to paint that on with a brush later. But for the moment, we're just going to press on. We've got some really nice mulberry paper that we use for this one because I think it's got really good texture in it. All right. Yeah, we've sort of did a class recently at the restaurant with some guests with, what was it that we printed? Some sand whiting, which is always good. A little bit of a small fish, so it gets a bit challenging at times, but I think it's a nice one to work with. So just get a little ink on. So we want a little darker at the top, a little lighter at the bottom, ideally. And then, yeah, once we've done the printing, we can break the squid down. We'll make a couple of quick dishes and disassemble some parts for preservation. needs to work quickly because the ink will start to dry on the squid and then it won't come off on the paper, which is suboptimal. And as I said, want to work pretty cleanly as best as we can. All right. Hand washing station. You don't want to fiddle around with it too much, but at the same time, it's a little hard sometimes to step away. I think people can probably resonate with that one a little bit, end up fiddling with things too much. Prop that up a little bit so we get a better print. Still going to need paper and spray water. Alrighty. I'll need the ink and brush as well, sorry. So try not to get too much ink on your printing surface because it'll just transfer to the paper. It's a little bit challenging though sometimes. Let's do this, eh? I would certainly recommend using gloves when you're handling ink, but we are trying not to throw stuff away too much. All right. So let's get a nice line through the middle, hopefully. Once the paper goes down and touches it, it can't move because you'll create a double impression. So trying to be really careful about holding everything still. Usually try and hold one hand still while you use the other hand to press on. Just sort of getting all the way down to the edges. Trying Make sure I get that wing, get underneath that body. Definition around the eye. And just sort of really committing once the paper starts hitting the legs, because the legs can move on you, so you need to hold it still. Trying not to get double impressions. And again, you don't want to fiddle around too much once you've got it on. If you keep pressing in the same areas too much, you might just get a double impression, so that's not going to help you. All right, and hopefully it works out well. Not bad, not my best, I would say. All right, so we'll leave that there, and then we'll just quickly break through this squid. Let that dry for a bit. So later on, I'd go through with a brush, paint in an eye. I think you find sometimes that, certainly when you're breaking them down, you want to do a lot of stuff, but really once that eye comes in, it really comes to life. So Xander's going to break down the tube for me, and he's going to get some stuff set up there for making garum. Beatrice is going to jump over here as well, and we're going to clean up those legs. You can set up a board there. It's about 2.5 kilos in size, so it's usually about yay big by yay round. Very spiky. It looks like a dragon's egg, basically. And if it fell from a tree, which is usually about 20 meters tall, and hit you, you'd have a pretty rough day. So they tend to rope them off when they're in fruiting season, because they can be really, really dangerous. But they're super beautiful. They were a really important food source for Indigenous Australians. So we take the cones from those. We make miso out of them. We use the husks to make vinegar. And then, yeah, the shells we infuse into liqueur to make a really nice bunya nut liqueur. And then the nuts we nixtamalize for masa. We also turn them into miso. So we brought some masa to make flatbreads, and we also brought some miso to season a few things as well. So then Xander is going to be breaking down the squid there for me. He's going to clean up the wings for drying. So we'll dry them out, and we make like ragouts or like an exo, a few different things like that. And then the guts are going to get pulled apart for making garum. We use a pretty basic recipe of just koji rice, salt, a little bit of lactic acid liquid, and the squid guts to make the garum. And it's one of, I think it was about, we counted the other day, 24 garums that we have. I think it was about 23 misos, 15 vinegars, 5 shoyus, and 8 flavored liqueurs. We only know that because we sort of tried to get a small one in a little container so we could taste everything at once, and that was a longer process than I set aside for, unfortunately, but that's all right. And then Xander's going to give me the tube, and we're just going to give it a little score and a little blowtorch, and I've got a really nice broth made from fish bones and some of the preserved yuzu that we have as well. So we'll just turn that into hopefully a lovely little dish. Cool. Blowtorch is here. All right. You got your knife, I've got my knife. Sweet. I'll get some more of this ink off my hands. Nailed it. So I've got a little bit of bonita garum mixed together with some herb vinegar that we make. We'll give that a few seconds in there. We've got some preserved kelp and preserved yuzu that we brought with us. A few nice little herbs. Yep, cool. So Beatrice has got our bunya nut flatbread. We've got a little bit of bunya nut miso to go on that. We've brought over some really nice Australian finger limes from Buck's Farm, a little bit of horseradish, and then we made some sort of jelly out of a type of fermented sea lettuce that we use. If we give it a few days in the fridge, we tend to find that the sea lettuce kind of breaks down. It almost brings out these kind of truffle aromas, which is really interesting. And it kind of has a little bit more body to it. It's still quite tasty. And then we've got a little jelly made from some of our squid garum as well that we turn into a sort of kind of faux caviar because we don't really get caviar where we are, so it's not really on the menu, unfortunately, but that's all right. So those little bits there we're going to give to Xander. That's part of our garum scenario. Yep, beautiful. So he's got wings for drying. He's got offcuts for garum. We've taken our ink sac for printing. We've got our legs turning into bunya nut flatbread with our seasonings. So Xander's got a little dish made from the wings, the ones that we brought with us dried. We turned them into a sort of XO-style sauce, I suppose. Dry them over our grill. They smoke. We then rehydrate them. Caramelize them out with a little bit of shallots and garlic and lots of native pepper, and then add in quite a bit of our squid garum as well. And with that one, we just kind of cook it down for a while. We've got some cold potato noodles. Just sort of toss that through. And then a little bit of the, I'm going to say this wrong, and I'm just so sorry for it, kalua paste that Chef Jun made out of the native nut, which I think has got a really amazing flavor, really beautiful sort of cocoa notes. We've just extended it with a little bit of macadamia nut, which I think is a really nice pairing with it. Kind of gives a bit of fat, a bit of body, and then added a little bit of our squid garum to give it some more flavor. He's finishing that one with just some of our fried fish skin and a little bit of fried sort of shallots and herbs. And then, that was all for that one, wasn't it? Some macadamia miso. Lovely. And then, yeah, Beatrice has got our bunya nut. And then, yeah, I'm just going to give this guy a little blowtorch and hopefully not set off the fire alarms, but I'm confident it'll be all right. So it's just had a little pickle in our herb vinegar and squid garum and a little bit of, that's also the solution that we hydrated the kelp in. So there's a bit of kind of nice kelp in that. Sorry, Chef, I didn't damage your board. All right. Cool. So a little bit of our preserved yuzu that we get from Buck's Farm. A little bit of our pickled kelp that we preserve, washes up on the coast around us. A little bit of Thai basil, flowers, tiny bit of marigold. And then we've got a broth that we made from the smoked fish bones that we used a little bit of our lobster garum, and a little bit of oil that we've made from sort of herb offcuts. And then a little bit of our roasted kelp powder. All right, so aside from the mess we've made, I think nailed it. I don't know if you can see them very well, but that'll do for that. So yeah, that would be kind of typical of a serving that we would run in the restaurant. We would have, yeah, our main primary product that we're serving on one. We've got our secondary product that we're serving alongside of it, and then a longer term preserve that we run on a third dish. We would send that out as second course maybe on the tasting menu. Yeah, otherwise, thank you so much for it. Appreciate it.
Maybe we could just tackle a couple of questions that people have put up.
Oh, yes, sorry. Jeez.
Well, I could read it out to you and then, you know.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
So let's start with the first one. How do you exact the quality standards you want from suppliers? And do you have issues with best practices in logistics, delivery, and do you have to, I guess I think where this person is asking is like, do you have to nurture that sort of relationship with them and how you want it and before you get it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. I would say from my dealings here in the last few days, it feels like it's one that everyone kind of has. We have that as well. I would say generally speaking in Australia, I'm sorry, it's internal. Sorry. I would say generally speaking in Australia, we're in a pretty good position. Logistics are not bad. Because of where we are in a small town, there's often issues where people just don't want to deliver to us. So there's some things that they're just not available to us anymore. For example, I mean, there's a range of frustrating logistical things. For example, we get ducks from a really lovely duck farm. They're grown about 3 hours south of us. They then drive an hour and a half north of us with the ducks to then drive them 30 minutes south of us to then deliver them to us. So that's not ideal, but that is the way that the logistics ends up working. It goes farm to on courier, that courier takes it to a depot, that courier, another courier picks it up from that depot, drops it to another depot, and then that courier picks it up and brings it to us. And that is wildly frustrating, but that is the system. So when it comes to the way that the produce comes in the door, we are beyond lucky to be needing a small volume of product. And so we have direct personal relationships with the suppliers. And so over time, yeah, we've had to talk about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable and be there when things are harvested to work with that. So basically, there's no silver bullet as far as I can see it. It's a personal relationship. And I think when you form that personal relationship, you also feel pretty attached to it. For example, I've been working with the duck lady for a long time, and if something's wrong and I call her up, she's very apologetic. If I was to say, you know what, I'm sick of this, I'm sick of these ducks, I'm going to stop using it, I would feel quite bad. It would be like breaking up with someone, and I don't want to do that. So we talk about the problem and we fix the problem, and it ends up being okay. But yeah, it's a little hard, that one, basically, yeah.
But then would that also then kind of like limit the extent of ingredient that you are able to use, for example?
100%. I mean, we have purposefully limited the ingredients that we use. We've limited it by our location. I'm saying the things that we want to use need to be special to us, close to us, and we've limited it by sustainability options. So if there is bad swell, if there's lots of rain and the fishermen aren't going out, we have a problem. We can solve that problem because we've learned how to deal with that over time. There's a lobster farm near us, very lucky. We can get lobsters when we want, so that helps. there's lots of nice vegetables near us. There are generally options, but yeah, we're very limited in what we use.
So I think that's interesting because that leads into one of the questions that we have here. Did you decide on the location of the restaurant based on the available resources or the other way around?
We decided on the location of the restaurant from a regional perspective based on the location of the resources and the fact that it's the region that I grew up in personally. So originally we were planning on opening a restaurant in Brisbane, which is a city about an hour and a half north of where we are. It's where my wife grew up. It's where I worked for maybe 10 or more years in total as a chef. And we had planned to be there because it's a nice city, lots of lovely people. I took a job short term when I was in between roles as the head chef of a hotel near where we are now. Really beautiful, sort of small luxury hotel. And kind of fell back in love with the region that I came from because I just hadn't visited it, didn't think about it. I think, you know, a lot of people might resonate with when you kind of get a little bit above high school age, you want to leave where you came from because it's fucking boring and you don't like it anymore. And maybe you appreciate it a bit more as you get older.
Then you miss it.
And you miss it.
Yeah.
But the location of the building was just available rent. You know, commercial real estate's hard. And so the location of Pottsville specifically, it's not a great choice of town. We love the town. It's an amazing town to be in. But like, if you were to pick a point and say, I want to be in this town, Pottsville's not the best choice, but it had the right building. It had the right opportunity, so we took it. Nice.
I think a lot of people also want to kind of know, do the things you make always turn out tasty?
No. It's a lot of trial and error. The dishes always turn out tasty. The fermented products don't always turn out tasty.
That's true.
I mean, you just got to try. I don't think garum made from our mullet, our typical mullet, is good garum. I just don't. We don't make it anymore. So we do other things with the mullet because it works, but the garum was bad 2 times, so I don't do it again.
We have just, I guess we'll go 2 more questions. There are a lot of questions. You've got like about 11 questions.
Jesus, all right.
But I think
I appreciate that.
In the
really
interest
do.
of time,
yeah.
we're just going to go through a couple, and then the rest you can, you know, assault him after.
Yeah, I'll be around.
We see lesser people wanting to stay longer in the industry to build a career. Do you see the same thing happening in Australia, and maybe even specifically Pottsville?
I would say that in Australia, we definitely see less people wanting to stay in the industry for a long term as a whole. I'd say there's certainly businesses that buck that trend a bit. There's a restaurant in Sydney called Rockpool Bar and Grill. Some of you may be mildly familiar with it. It used to be owned by Neil Perry. It's about 15 years old, and it has a core team of staff that have been there for 10 years. Like the majority of their team is long-term staff. They look after them well. They have a good environment, so I think they've done really well. I would say on the whole, turnover is high, super high. On the whole, for us, for our business, we're very lucky that turnover is low. I think probably that is, we try to be, I wouldn't say that we necessarily can always culture like the best, most relaxing work environment because the job is hard. But what I would say is that we try hard as a family to be open with the people that we employ. We try really hard to, where we can, provide opportunities for them to learn or to do the things that they want to do. And we just try really hard to involve them in our processes. If we want to change something, we tend to talk to people about it. If we need something to happen, we tend to bring it to the group and work together to find a solution. And I hope that endears us to our staff enough that they stay for a while. Fortunately, these guys have been with us for a little bit. Beatrice has been a bit over a year. Xander, we hired as a school-based apprentice when he was 16, 15? 16. He's now 21. He is, yeah, by far the longest employee we've had. He's been with us since almost we opened. Yeah, it's a relationship we super value.
So how big is your team? And how do you manage to do all of the stuff that you're doing with the time and people you have?
That's a great question that I get a little bit. This is our team, plus a kitchen hand. And then front of house. At the moment, our front of house team is 1 person plus 2 casuals. And then my wife Yen does business admin, and she's like an assistant manager front of house. So she does maybe one shift front of house a week because she's not from hospitality. She's a designer, graphic, urban designer, and like town planner by trade. So she's not like from the hospitality sphere as it would be. So we had to close the restaurant to be here. So we've taken a week off to be with you lovely people. And that's, you know, a challenging decision for a business to make, but we figured we'd get something out of this, so we took that plunge and we came. How do we get everything done? I mean, I try quite hard to take the load off these guys as much as I can because I don't want to burn my staff out. We try and keep them on straight shift rosters, no doubles. Having said that, we're open 5 days a week. Dinner Thursday, Friday, Saturday, lunch Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday dinner. So I try and make sure they don't do doubles, and otherwise it's single shift, so it's not too bad. I stay late and do prep. I work 7 days a week. I typically get about 4 hours to 3 hours sleep, and that is not sustainable, not by a long shot. We don't profit as a business. We run even. We pay our personal bills from the restaurant so that we as a household don't go under. It is not what I would call sustainable as a business, as it stands. We need to increase our pricing to be sustainable. We don't feel like we can increase our pricing because we charge for a set menu $165. So that is about it's about 480 ringgit, give or take. Maybe like 500 ringgit for our menu. It's a menu of about 20 small dishes spread up across snacks, courses, you know, sweets, petit fours, that sort of stuff. So it's about 20 small dishes.
You look good for 4 hours of sleep.
Appreciate that.
I guess we'll just finish with just one last question. And I know I said the last one's going to be the last one, but just pertinent to what you were saying, like how do you find it's a bit of a struggle operating a business in the way that you want it from the team, from the produce and the kind of food that you want to produce in the small town that you're at? Because I'd imagine there's a critical mass of people who would be able to spend.
Yeah. No, I mean, we are really, really lucky to have a good relationship with the people in the town that we're in. I'd be lying if I said every single one of them wanted to visit our restaurant or thought we were a valuable part of it, their community, because, you know, there's people that don't earn as much money and would look at us and just say, you're for out-of-towners, you're not for us, and we don't want you here. And that's, you know, that is fair to an extent. But the majority of the people in our community have been beyond supportive, and that's very lucky. We need to attract tourists. We're lucky that our town is 10 minutes from the next town, 10 minutes from the next town. There's a conglomerate of small towns within about 40 minutes, and then a major city and another major city not far away. So that's a positive for us. But generally speaking, I would say, yeah, it's a struggle, 100%. We're lucky we're a small business and we can control our costs. But yeah, I would say our visitation's been dropping because tourism to our area has been dropping. So what we want to see is obviously that to start rising again. And we don't have the magic answers for that other than continue to work hard and try and look at opportunities to find, you know, ways to reach new people and attract people to our area, more or less, and hope that that works. My wife looks at it from different perspectives because that's her mindset, and that's really good. So she's out there trying to find other opportunities as well, and all you can do is do your best and hope that people like it. We make our decisions based on what we feel is ethical and good, things we can stand behind, and so we don't want to compromise that to be busier. We don't want to buy things that we don't trust, or we don't want to spend our money as a business on things that we don't want to see continue. People that are using practices that we don't want to see continue, because every time you spend your money, it's a vote. As a person, you're voting for a business to succeed. As a business, you're voting for other businesses to succeed with your money. So you think about where it goes, basically. And yeah, hopefully people do the same with us, basically. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for a most fascinating